Good morning, everybody. It seems like we got 115 people here. That's the new record for us. So I think that's a good signal, Joe, to kick it off. So without further ado, I'll kick it off to Joe, and we'll get everyone started. Thanks for joining us.
All right, thank you so much, Avi. First of all, I want to welcome everybody from the Tech Collective. If you don't know us, we are Rhode Island's Technology Authority, and we provide technology for our leadership, for our members, our practitioners, and using our members, we provide technology to small businesses that typically don't have it. I also want to welcome you from our Rhode Island CIO Forum, which I'll talk about again in a second. But first, for some housekeeping, I do want to re-emphasize what Avi just said earlier about please mute yourself if you're not on the speaker panel. We are looking for direct input from everybody, and we'd like you to chat with each other in the comment section. But if you have a question you want to direct directly to the panel, please direct message me by just selecting down at the bottom of that the comment section. You can just pick my name, direct message me, and we'll sort through those questions for the panel. There'll be plenty of time later on. I want to really thank our sponsors. First of all, Venture Cafe and District Hall. They are a partner to Tech Collective. We've been working together to try to improve each other's organizations, and they were a tremendous help in putting this together today. I do want to their sponsorship promo here. Venture Cafe, creating virtual space for innovators and entrepreneurs to gather, programming, to educate, connecting anyone with an idea to make things happen. They're bringing their weekly Venture Cafe event online from 4 to 7 each Thursday, and are developing additional pop-up programming throughout the week. Avi can share more about this after the discussion. I also want to thank Bridge Technical Talent. Bridge Technical Talent provides rapid response resources in a rapidly changing world. Businesses are innovating where and when and how essential work gets done. Bridge is partnering with their clients in response to these evolving technology requirements with a focus on safety, speed, and efficiency. You really know the local market, so if you're looking for some IT consulting and staffing, please check them out at bridge-talent.com. All right, getting on with the program, I just want to do a couple of introductions. First of all, I wanted to just let you know how we got here. Recently, Tech Collective, like many organizations, have been fielding many questions from our members and partners in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Last week, our Rhode Island CIO Forum met virtually to share some of the successes, concerns, and lessons learned regarding the current work from home situation. With more people working from home, will our companies be able to support the increased work from home environment? One risk that was raised was concerns about the capacity of Rhode Island's network infrastructure. And that's how we arrived here today. I want to thank Verizon, OSHEAN, and Cox for helping us pull this together, to pull this important panel together. Let me introduce our panel and our moderator. Michele Cinquegrano is the Regional Director of State Government Affairs for Verizon. Michele has responsibility for the relationships with municipalities, state government agencies, and lobbying in Rhode Island, and has been with Verizon for 27 years. Dave Marble is President and CEO of OSHEAN, the state's research and education network. OSHEAN provides broadband, internet, cybersecurity, and cloud services to the community anchor institutions. Ross L. Nelson has 30 years of telecommunications industry experience, currently serving as Vice President of Business Cox for the Northeast region. As Vice President, Mr. Nelson establishes and leads the company's commercial business strategy in Rhode Island, Connecticut, and Cleveland. Our today is Bill Bartholomew. He's the host and executive producer of the Bartholomew Town podcast, found at RhodeIslandPodcast.com, which the Boston Globe recently described as the gold standard of Rhode Island podcasts. He produces bi-weekly new podcast episodes, daily digital content across multiple platforms, and frequent terrestrial broadcasts as well. So Bill, with that, let me throw it over to you.
All right, good morning, Joe. Thank you so much, and thanks everyone for joining on this important and timely panel. I want to kick it off with Michele, and my question is, I guess, assuming there's a trickle-up effect from the public, what have you heard from government officials about, I guess, even working backwards, what the concerns are, by and large, of Rhode Islanders right now?
I think people are concerned that if they're working from home or they're learning from home, that they have the ability to do that and getting the data, mostly data. I haven't heard a lot of issues with voice, although we've seen that trickle up surprisingly on landlines, but I think more people are joining conference calls, as well as the state doing that. They're setting up a lot more conference calls. So that's a lot of the requests that I'm getting, and then making sure that our most vulnerable population can get broadband for this time of need.
And Ross, on the business side of things, any similar feedback that you're getting, just basically making sure infrastructure is in place?
Yeah, they want to make sure that that we're up and operational and that we're here. And I can tell you, we are fully operational. We had to virtualize most of our folks. So our call center that's located here in Rhode Island is about 75% virtual at this point. The remaining are doing social distancing, if you will. So the cubes are all spread out for the remaining people that are there. The other challenge that we've seen is businesses that are closing or shuttering services and trying to figure out what to do with their services. So some of them are suspending services, some are closing and just terminating services.
And David, if you could just sort of summarize what OSHEAN does, what your role is. It's obviously not the same household name that Cox or Verizon are. If you could put that into an elevator pitch for us.
Yeah, OSHEAN is a 20-year-old nonprofit serving what the federal government classifies as the community anchor institution market. And that was really any other nonprofit in the state, but that can be a Brown University or a Lifespan Hospital, or it could be, St. Rosalima School, or it could be, Family Services nonprofit, for example. So it's the meds and the eds and a lot of the government agencies, whether they be municipalities or the state government itself. We have a broadband fiber optic infrastructure that goes around the state, and we also provide internet access and cybersecurity services and things like that. One of the big sectors for us is K-12. So we're supremely focused right now on the needs of K-12. It's one thing for Brown to have a big IT organization. It's another thing for some of the K-12s and some of the technical challenges that they have. And we are very, very busy right now with those markets.
Okay, let's go around the panel. The big question here, I suppose, is what is the capacity of Rhode Island's network infrastructure? And without putting necessarily any numbers or specifics to it, because it's of course evolving and growing over time, I guess, are we in a place now where we're all set? In layman's terms, we're going to be all set based on the demands that we're seeing with these new work from home, learn from home environments, and obviously more people streaming content, et cetera. If we could start with Michele and sort of touch on Rhode Island's network capacity.
Sure. I think we're lucky because of the percentage of fiber that we have throughout the state with all the carriers. We're kind of being more adaptable and flexible, seeing where it's needed, and kind of moving our network around to provide more capacity. I don't think that we have an issue with capacity. There are certainly going to be some, bottlenecks, whether you're using a VPN and you need to upgrade that pipe as a business owner to get more of your work at home, or a school. So I think that capacity-wise, I think that we're fine, and we're going to be nimble enough in the state. We've got a really robust network to kind of move that around and give capacity where needed.
And Ross, of course, right now, some businesses are shuttering, so that means that some people are terminating their internet as well. So there is a bit of a trade-off just in terms of the numbers. What's your take from a business perspective as offices become more remote?
Yeah, so that we monitor the network daily, both the core backbone all the way down to the nodes. We're looking for utilization, we're looking for congestion. And at this point, we're actually in really good shape. The advantage that Rhode Island has, there was a report that was done by Commerce RI a few years ago, and Rhode Island is the most broadband ready state in the country in terms of high-speed capacity, access to residents, in terms of fiber deployment, and in terms to access to multiple providers. So based on that, I think Rhode Island's going to fare pretty well through all of this.
All right. And on the meds and ed side, I mean, that's front and center right now, David.
Yeah.
You feel the infrastructure from OSHAN's perspective, David, do you feel that things are in place, the infrastructure is where it needs to be for a successful operation here as we move forward into these uncertain times?
Well, my caution is having it available, and we do have a very well-connected broadband state. The last mile is an issue. And it's not whether or not the last mile is available or not, it's whether the last mile has been adopted by the organizations or the people who need it. And, you know, Michele mentioned the lower income side of things, and I'm very worried about some of the population of the K-12 schools with a significant number of students who literally don't have access because, quite honestly, it's never been put in place for them. And so we need to understand that there are still in the vulnerable population an issue. The second piece is that capacity in terms of bandwidth is only one component of what capacity really means. And so what ends up happening is, and Michele also mentioned VPN technologies, is VPN technologies, say for the teachers of the school who need to get access to the administrative systems, is different than the internet access that a student may need. And so a lot of systems have needed to be upgraded. And it might be upgrading the firewalls, it might be adding VPN pools that were originally sized for some smaller percentage of work at home people. And I think one of the interesting things is a lot of people are learning about split tunneling, which is a technology inside of VPNs where the internet goes to the internet and the VPN or the secure access for administrative capabilities goes in a separate tunnel. Those things are very, very active projects, emergency projects, if you will, happening as we speak.
Michele, what's been your experience so far on the customer service side of things? Are customers, and again, I know you're not a customer service manager, but just from a layman's perspective here, do you get the sense that the general public right now is comfortable with Rhode Island's internet capacity? That includes businesses and just everyday people who are logging on to check their email.
Sure. Well, I think that that's an interesting question. I don't think anyone's ever happy with customer service, to be honest with you. I know that it's an issue to call into IVRUs and get into that kind of that spiral. And again, with us, as with Ross, our call center that's located in Providence is about 98% now working from home virtually. I haven't seen the service levels on that. We haven't heard issues of any outages and people not being able to get onto the internet. It seems to be business as usual in that type of way. Obviously, some folks who were under the gun who maybe didn't have an option or have broadband at home now are placing orders. And we're doing our best to get to everyone. We still have our technicians out in the field doing installations and repairs. So I feel like our customer service level is the same as we get more and more into this and people are looking to do more things online. We'll probably be doing a lot that's actually self-install or something that can be done remotely to do an upgrade without having to have someone come to the house.
Right, that's an interesting element of this as well. In these times of social distancing, there's a physical, mechanical element to internet installation. How can we avoid sending texts into houses for that last mile connection in a place that may not have internet access right now? Let's go around the panel. If all three of you could kind of give a 1 or 2 minute reply to that on how to evolve the installation of internet here in Rhode Island.
Yeah, actually, before we do that, I just want to go back and address one of the things David mentioned with the students. That's definitely an issue, making sure that we get access to all the kids that are now doing online learning. And Cox has a program with a nonprofit called Connect to Compete, which provides low-cost internet broadband access to families. So we've been working with the schools. It's $9.99 a month, and it's up to 50 meg right now. So we're in the process of trying to deploy that and get our text out to all those students right now that are doing online learning. In addition to that, we have Cox Complete Care, which is really help desk support. So when these kids now get internet for the house for the first time, they may have their Chromebook, but this Connect Care, Complete Care actually helps them figure out how to download the software and get those laptops and desktops usable. So that definitely is a priority for us to get that. And as Michele said, the techs are out there, they're on the road still, they're still doing installs and still doing repairs. But in this time, there's a little bit more limited in what they'll do. They're going to be individual techs. They may or may not go into the house. They may come to the house with the equipment, give it to you and instruct you, walk you through it. So there is some restrictions on how they're doing it. But there's also some software that helps too. There's a software called Help Lightning, which is like a virtual reality. Imagine you take your phone and you're looking at your box, your cable modem, and you can see remote hands actually making the changes on it, showing you what you need to do and connect. So there's software like that we can use that would help a person whose house we can't go in.
And David, your take on internet installation evolution.
Well, the evolution of all of these things is getting better as we speak. I caution that in a pandemic that sort of came upon us and everybody's going, wow, hey, look at this is different. A number of us have done things like disaster recovery planning and even practice those environments, but honestly, none of us have practiced this. And so I caution in thinking that things are going to magically, appear, whether it be automation of internet access, and that kind of thing, or a lot of those things that just, haven't been put in place yet. And I caution, and some of that is last mile things, right? Like if we're not signed up and there are issues, I'll give you an example. There are things that are being done at the federal level that are helping schools. For example, the FCC, so we unblocked all our bandwidth. So we said, okay, anybody in our membership can use as much bandwidth as they want. Well, technically that violated an FCC E-rate gifting rule. I'm not supposed to give gifts, and Ross and Michele are in the same boat. We're not supposed to give gifts to schools. Well, the FCC last week had to pass an emergency rule to get rid of that. They also passed yesterday the ability for outside, some things are being built up, like outside parking lots are being freed up in universities, and some places all over the country are building outside Wi-Fi access parking lots. So you can sit in your car and you can get access to the Wi-Fi hotspot that might be in a parking lot. You're still keeping your social distancing. Well, the FCC again had to then waive E-rate rules to say that a library, for example, could do that if they wanted to do that. And those kinds of installations can actually be done fairly quickly. And so as we evolve through this, there are a number of things that need to go all the way from the policy level down to the technical installation level to make these things a reality.
Definitely a full spectrum conversation, no doubt about it, much more than we can do here in 45 minutes on that particular note. Michele, I want to touch on, I guess, businesses, small businesses, medium-sized, large, whoever it may be, and what they can do to, one, help make sure they have internet access for themselves, but also to contribute to, I guess, good citizenship with the internet right now. We'll put it that way. What can businesses do to make sure that as we expand our capacity in the interim, they're not infringing on the opportunities of others to have internet access right now?
Yeah, I mean, so basically for us in our product line, what we give to you is all yours. We never cap anything, especially on our Fios product. Wireless, we're doing a few different things with that depending on your packages. So basically what you need to use it for, the fiber is all yours to use in the bandwidth. So I just would love to caution people, obviously during this time, there's a lot more phishing going on, cybersecurity risks of their networks, since they have so many of their folks, almost all, I'm sure, working remotely. So just to be cognizant of what's going on, and hopefully you have a really good firewall and your cybersecurity is up to par, and to just be careful and to be on the lookout and kind of give your employees that information as well, so they're not putting your network at risk.
And Ross, that must be the same basic advice for home consumers or anyone else who's on the internet right now.
Yeah, I would agree. You know, the phishing, malware, ransomware, changing passwords often, that'll certainly help. You know, we talked a little bit yesterday, you know, now that everybody's home, are there other applications that are in danger, your online banking or any other sites that you go to? And really that hasn't changed. I mean, they're still secure. I think the challenge now for folks is going to be is what do you do when you've got 2 kids at home that are doing online learning and 2 parents that are doing, you know, video conference calls like this. So that'll be the challenge for people when they're working from home, for sure.
Before I want to get into more speculative stuff, kind of looking into the future and how we might look back on this period. But before we do, just a reminder to all of you, again, thank you so much, everyone who's joining us today. Feel free to leave your own questions in the comments. We will address those once we get through this panel in just a few more minutes. Moving forward, this will be a question for all 3 panelists to sort of take your time with, I suppose. Moving forward, let's imagine it's a year from now. We've mined the tremendous lessons and learnings from this experience locally, globally. What do each of you expect to learn from all of this, particularly as it relates to what could be a larger work from home environment, learn from home environment, and how will we, let's start with as Rhode Islanders, how will we evolve from this? Let's start with David.
Well, there are a number of things in each vertical market that are learnings or are wake-up calls, if you will. And one of them I find interesting, right, is in the medicine field. You know, the idea, for example, that we might be able to broadband connect all the nursing homes in the state and use telemedicine applications to those nursing homes. Those of those on the call that work for me know that it's just been a soapbox item for me for a while now, because a lot of times those kinds of things are thought of as a rural issue, and they're not. They are a workflow issue, and we could do a lot with telemedicine applications in nursing homes. You know, and it might be a wake-up call for some in the administrative areas of the healthcare sector in Rhode Island to take a look at that and see what the new use case might be as we go forward in this kind of a situation. That's an example of some of the learnings that may affect longer term outlooks.
Michele?
I think that one of the learnings is going to be regarding our on-distance learning, our long-distance learning and online learning, the haves and the have-nots. Those kids that have, you know, the ability to have their internet at home and do their homework and have the capability to do everything. And then those, like Dave had mentioned, that don't have anything at their homes, and, you know, even the ability to have a Chromebook, whether they have a hotspot. I think it'll be a pressure for a lot of the carriers to make sure that we look at that vulnerable population and give them the same tools that every other kid has, no matter what zip code they live in. I think that's going to be really important as a learning experience from this epidemic that's been going on.
Ross?
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I think even corporate companies are going to change the way they do business. I think, you know, if we can prove that we can work remote like this, I mean, I think you're going to see a lot less traveling, a lot more video teleconferencing. What I hope doesn't change is I hope we don't completely work from home. You know, part of what we miss right now is the culture, right? Being together and being able to see each other. You know, I get my steps in every day with management by walking around and connecting with your employees. So I said, you know, part of it is, I think there's a lot of good support that'll be there. I think good planning is happening to a plan for events like this, but I don't want to get away from the culture side either. So
I would add one more thing to what, you know, Michele and you know, said about the educational side. We don't have enough understanding of outcomes in learning this way, and one of the great groups that's involved in Rhode Island education in this area is the Highlander Institute, and they've done great work in blended learning initiatives and that kind of thing, and trying to understand outcomes, and just consider that some of these students have IEPs, right? And they have very specific, call it non sit in front of your computer ways that they need to learn. Patternistic learning is very, very difficult, versus say analogy-based learning, and all the different types of learning methods for students is very hard to do over over the internet. And so outcomes, I think, is something that we're going to need to spend a lot of time understanding, because in a lot of cases our teachers are trying some of this stuff for the first time.
Yeah, it's a great experiment, capital G, capital E at this point, no doubt about it. Before we go to the questions from all of you out there who have been joining us this morning, I just want to sort of ask an esoterical question, go around real quick. Everyone feeling optimistic from an industrial perspective, from within your industry, about where we are now and where we're heading, especially here in Rhode Island? If we could just start with Michele, feeling optimistic. Yeah,
I am. I think that our capabilities and the talent that we have here in the state will definitely put us at the forefront. I think that looking at how people are nimbly changing what they're doing to help with the resource allocation, and if we as a backbone can help in that, we are right there, and then we'll be able to accommodate anything that they have.
Ross?
Yeah, I am optimistic. I think what you see from our employees, their ability to be flexible, adaptable through this, keep a positive attitude, and return to their new normal, right? They're still having their team meetings and talking with their customers. But I couldn't have been more proud of the way they just reacted to this. I mean, the folks that had laptops were easy to go home. Others who had desktops literally brought their desktops and their monitors and keyboards home. And we're in constant communication with them. So yeah, no, I think from us personally, I think we're optimistic in the way they've done it. And I think, as an industry, I think we're in good shape right now.
And David?
I'm obviously, I'm always optimistic. So I'm just an optimistic person, I guess. But in general, I'm always optimistic when I see the kind of collaboration that has been going on between not just, what my own people have been able to do themselves and being flexible, like Ross talked about, but also the kind of collaborations that are going on with our member institutions and us, and the kinds of just, drop it all. We need to do this. Let's get this done. Let's meet, at this parking lot and hand off this card to this person. I mean, it has been extraordinary, and I'm very upbeat about the reaction and the call it camaraderie, if you will, of the state's important institutions. I'll tell you, coming together in a time of need. I'm very, very proud of that for Rhode Island.
I think this call is an example of that. You've got companies that you'd normally look at as competitors joining today to work together to kind of reassure everybody that all of us are here, all of us are working, we're up and running, and we can continue to do business.
All right, thank you all so much. I'm going to turn it back to Joe right now, who is going to, I believe we're going to go to our user questions, or our conference participant questions. Joe, it's all yours.
All right. Hey, Bill, thank you so much. Great job. Really appreciate the flow, keeping this thing moving. We do have some questions, and let me just, I popped them over into a Word doc. Hold on one second. So a couple of questions were around the Newport County area. Newport County has no widely available, this is from Theodore Peets. Newport County has no widely available fiber, which is a big part of last mile capacity. And Rob Blackburn asked, do we know how much the mobile carriers are helping with the last mile issue in certain areas? And then there's one more question related from Andrew Scanlon. How is the situation affecting regions that do not have as much infrastructure, especially limited fiber infrastructure as in Newport County? So Newport County and last mile seems to be an area of concern. You think maybe we could have each of the three of you kind of address that in turn?
Yeah, I'll start with that. There is a lot of fiber on Aquidneck Island. We've got a lot of fiber all the way from Mount Hope Bridge in that area, East and West Main Road, all the way down to the center of Newport, the Navy base. Every business in Newport is within 1,000 feet of fiber connection to us. And I know Verizon's got fiber, and OSHEAN has fiber to their constituents as well. But it's not just a fiber connection, because right now, residentially, we have our HFC network, which touches every house, and you can get gig speeds on HFC at this point. So fiber is one thing, but in terms of speeds, that's ubiquitous across the state of Rhode Island in terms of access.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of this question comes up because we don't have the FiOS product available in Aquidneck Island. And I know that, you know, a lot of that comes up when we're speaking with consumers that want more choice when it comes to that. But again, we do have fiber. Our network is fiber in the Aquidneck Island, Newport area. And we're able to provide not the FiOS products, but other ones that are comparable speed-wise on our backbone, our fiber backbone there.
Yeah, and us being not serving residential, certainly we have fiber capacity in the middle mile to help address if there are capacity issues. But as Michele said, some of it is that last mile access, and so in the last mile case, this is one of those where I said, you know, it's some of this is not magic, and you can't automatically just, you know, flick a switch and make more capacity appear, you know, sort of out of nowhere. There's an adoption rate and the use of things like, you know, there are data caps, you know, on some of the wireless plans and things like that will affect people who want to tether to the network, for example. So there are some limitations in the Newport region, and we've been working with those teams to try to figure out other ways to increase that capacity over time. But I don't think that that's one that's going to be solved very quickly, if you will. That's just an opinion.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Ross.
Oh, go ahead, Michele.
I know that wireless had come up too, and I think that one of the things that's overlooked when we talk about broadband is people think it's a wired solution only. But with the LTE network that we have from many different carriers here in the state, those speeds can provide more than adequate bandwidth for what you need. So I know that many carriers are doing different things. We have also increased the amount of gig that we're providing during this time for hotspots for folks that use their phones or their devices as hotspots. So I know other carriers are doing similar things during this to help with work at home and distance learning. Sorry, Ross, I'll give it back to you.
No, I was just saying, in terms of the last mile, there's not a business in Newport that if they wanted to get fiber access that they couldn't get it. And we could either do it through us or we could build a last mile for OSHEAN. So I think the fiber capacity can be there. We also opened up all of our access points throughout the state. So there's thousands of access points that are now open to the public. So that's helping contribute. So I think connectivity on the island should be strong. And as it is throughout the state.
Well, thank you all for that. Another question from Joe Fredrickson of Blue Cross says they've been experiencing more fast busy on their voice calls. Can someone speak to this, particularly on mobile phone calls?
So I know that we have had some issues in some areas with mobile to landline calls. So obviously our network is monitoring it and working on that. I know that there have been a lot of issues with conference calling as well, all across the country. So to help with that fast busy and issues on conference calls, to schedule them on the 15-minute increments. Obviously, as I mentioned, we're seeing a 25% increase in our voice traffic over what we've seen. You know, obviously voice hasn't always been one of the big pushes, but lately with everyone working from home, we are seeing that. We're also actually seeing the calls on the wireless network are up, voice calls are up 10%, and they're actually lasting 15% longer in duration. So I know that we're constantly monitoring our voice network and addressing those fast busies.
Thank you. And a kind of a bigger question. What are some of the, if you guys could talk about some of the biggest risks and that you guys see there, what are the biggest risks you see, and what are some strategies that your service providers and businesses can take to mitigate those risks? Big question.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. You know what? Something that comes top of mind is maybe trouble calls and repairs, putting our techs out in the public and to a house that might have been quarantined, or someone that's, you know, contagious right now. That's probably our biggest risk, is the ability to provide service to a house or a business that's closed or quarantined.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with Ross on that, because I think we have our frontline employees that deal with the public, whether, you know, we have our technicians out in the field or wireless employees at stores, and making sure that we're following social distancing. Obviously, for our technicians, when we receive a call about a customer or a business that's out of service, that's vital for them to have their service with us. You know, making sure that we're taking all the necessary precautions to keep our employees safe and healthy as well, and not putting the public at risk.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I you know, this is obviously just a personal opinion in terms of, I don't think that the risks are coming from the network, or even call it the IT infrastructure that we're capable of producing, and let's say between the three of us on this call. I don't think that that is the risk. I think we are quite honestly all at a company level very good, and have gotten better and better over the last number of years at producing amazing capacity to deal with these issues. And so I don't think that is the risk. I think the risks are in the individual vertical sections, whether that be the healthcare industry getting overloaded, but it won't be from an IT perspective. I think it will be a bunch of other things in the healthcare sector that can be a risk.
Awesome. So one other question asked about resources, and probably a good way to end the panel is to talk about where can folks go to get more information if they're interested in learning more about cybersecurity risks, for instance, during this particular time. And let me just mention before I kick it back to you folks, you know, Tech Collective, working with Venture Cafe, will be hosting a weekly cybersecurity chat. Hopefully starting next week. We're pulling together some of our speakers. We have a tremendous amount of content. Now they're working with Tooney's group and Venture Cafe. We'll have a vehicle to get the message out through the virtual network that they provided to us today. But anybody else have any ideas on where they can look? Folks can look for more cybersecurity advice or resources.
Verizon actually is one of the producers of the DBIR, the Data Breach Incident Report. We've been doing it for many years, and it has some really good information about cybersecurity events, the industries that we see them in, and what people can do, and resources from there. So it's actually an industry-wide report that we've worked on for a long time. And obviously I can even send it to you, Joe, if you wanted to be able to provide that information to your membership, where they can take a look at that report.
And then I mentioned Connect to Compete earlier for the low income and internet access. You can get that at Connect Now at Cox.com, and it tells you a lot more information about that. So if you know someone that doesn't have an internet at home and they're on a school lunch program or reduced to free lunch program, they can go to Connect Now at Cox.com, and they can sign up for service and we'll get it to them.
Yeah, I'll make a plea. Maybe this is, for the Tech Collective and Joe, is that we produce a list of great resources, like in the cybersecurity space, MSISAC, and there's a number of great resources that we could connect to. But I do want to emphasize that with this work at home, the cybersecurity risks do increase just because people are less used to, doing it on their own, if you will, and, you doing their passwords the right way and doing all that kind of fun stuff that you absolutely need to do. So there are issues there, and Joe, maybe we produce a list of hyperlinks to some of those great resources on the Tech Collective page as we go forward.
That's a great idea. Thanks, Dave. Thank you all. Really appreciate everybody's work today on this panel, bringing it together so quickly. Again, as Ross mentioned, it's not typical to get Verizon and Cox on the same panel with OSHEAN. So we really appreciate you guys stepping up and addressing the concerns in the community as quickly as you did. I also, we're going to throw it back to Venture in a second, but I also want to thank our other sponsor, Bridge Technical Talent. Again, if you're looking for IT staffing, check out bridge-talent.com. And of course, so check out the Tech Collective. We have lots of programming. We're moving to virtual, and there'll be more about that in the next week or so on our website. So give us a week and then check us out as well. And let me throw it back over to Avi to wrap it up. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Joe. And thanks again to all the panelists, Michele, Ross, Dave, and Bill for leading that conversation. And of course, this is a great start of a partnership with you, Joe, and Tech Collective.